I just want to remind you of the purpose of this copying. And as I mentioned before, what I'm concerned about is to try to merge what we do at the university with what we do in the business. And I can fortunately say we, both places. And I also want to remind you that in science you work in small niches. So you can see food science consists of food chemistry and sensory science, and there's not it's two completely different approaches to food. Food microbiology, that's anything to do with bacteria and fungi. Dairy technology, and then we've got multivariate statistics as the kind of main methodology to understand data. So today we have been playing with sensory science that's based on statistics, of course, but using tools developed from pure statistics. So the purpose today was to do something that merged the two worlds. And without saying too much, I can say that we have some interesting findings. So some of it worked, which is pretty interesting, I think. So I just want to tell you something about the background of the coffees that you tasted. Because I want to merge the two worlds, as I said, when I'm a roast master, I think of my roast parameters like this. I think about the two curves. Now I'm only talking about temperature. We could also add all the other stuff I noted today. But this is just the consequences of the roasting process. So you've got two curves, and when you've got two curves, you have a temperature difference. And this temperature difference tells you something about the roast at different key places on the roasting process. The turning point, first crack, and target color when you take it out. You've got some temperature differences these places. You've also got the rate of rise. That's the speed of the roast at any given point. And you've got something that's traditionally called development time. I think it's Willem Booth that coined that phrase. That's the time from first crack to target color. Yeah, so when I talk about roast parameters or parameter space, these are the roast parameters that I'm talking about, and I hope that you can recognize these as something that inhabits your world, right? So in this way, I'm taking a point of departure of the handcraft aspect. So what I've been concerned about is trying to find some rules of thumb. Everybody in here knows the 25-second rule of espresso brewing. If an espresso brews between 20 and 30 seconds, it's all right. You will never win a barista competition by just following this simple rule, but often if cafes have got no clue, you can get everything from 6-second brew to 50-second brew. So this simple step of just introducing a simple rule of thumb that will funnel them from the absolute lowest quality segment to something much higher and in the high end of the scale by just using really simple rules of thumb. So what I've tried to do is to do something similar for coffee roasting so that people can quickly go outside the defect roast and then into something that could be considered a specialty coffee roast. So as you can see here, I've tried to illustrate it. So the parameter space is here, and you've got some extremes in this parameter space. You can have a coffee that is clearly too dark or clearly too light. That's the trivial part of a roast definition, right? Everybody knows that light roast is acidic and low bitterness, and dark roast is high bitterness and low acidity. So that's kind of the two trivial extremes. But then I think there has been a lack of an attempt to try to define roast defect. You can find a lot of gossip and pictures and stuff with some explanation that are really not, nothing is told about the real circumstances around this defect. So I've tried to develop something that I would think as a clear defect. So I've tried to define what I consider to be scorched. I tried to define what I consider to be baked, and I tried to define what I consider to be underdeveloped. So here you can see you've got a parameter space with 5 different extremes, and then you've got the reference in the middle. So in a sense, as a consultant and as a trainer, I often see people outside what could be considered the specialty parameter range. So my job is to quickly take people from the gray zone into the green zone. And once you're in the green zone, it's more a question about roast style. It's not a clear defect, and that's something that people would really like to know when they start up a roastery. I would like to at least not make extremely bad roasts. And here the rules of thumb can be a help. But once you enter the green area, you will spend, and this can be done in a few days by consulting. But once you are in the green, then it's more a question about your endless and the rest of your life. You will play around with subtleties inside the green area, where it's more a question about personal preference and the style of the particular roastery. So that's what here RS1 is roast style 1, RS3, so this is just different roast styles, and these are some would consider, people from the commodity business, they would consider the specialty coffee business in Scandinavia to be in this area because they think it's too light, right? But so I've just tried to illustrate what I mean with sweet spot and how that relates to roast defects. So I've defined the roast defect and the reference, wrong computer. Yeah, I've defined the reference like this. So this is not universal. You can't just apply this on any roaster and any bean. But if you apply it, it's a good. I think this is my best rule of thumb I've found. Taking that as a point of departure, you can see first crack to 9 minutes. Depend on the roaster size. Small roasters you can roast quicker, and big ones you need to. 300 kilo roasters I've played with, and you need to wait for first crack 14-15 minutes. I've found best, and I think it's related to the convection, higher convection, but that's a completely separate discussion. So I've just defined this as the reference, and then you can see these are clearly too light, and these are clearly too dark. So this is outside the scale of lightness, and in the US I think they just consider this a dark cup of coffee, but where I come from, in Scandinavia, this is completely ruined. On the Action Gourmet scale, 45, that's really critical. So I had to develop something that would work in the Scandinavian environment, because that's where we wanted to conduct the research. And then I've defined the scorch one is just one that's clearly much too quick, so that it's really, the outside is burned. And as you can see, first crack is, you get first crack in 5 minutes. Actually, the ones I developed here, it was first crack in 4.5 minutes on this roast out there. And then 1 to 1.5 minute development time. That's a really, it's almost a flash roast, a commercial roast. And then I've tried to define the baked one as one with a nice time from inlet temperature to first crack, around 9 minutes, but then 6 to 7 minute development time. And that's my definition of a baked coffee. And then underdeveloped is one that just takes much too long to reach first crack, but still has got 3 minutes from first crack to target color. Because I think if I divide it into this, it makes sense physically and chemically. Because here you can see the material is spending much too long time in the pyrolysis of the actual roasting part. And here the pressure buildup is not quick, so this leads to is my hypothesis, it leads to a less spongious material, and you need the material to get spongious for the water to enter even into the grounds to get all the solubles out. So I just try to define something. This is an iterative process, so you can convince me that we need to find some new roast defects, or that you don't agree about these. But it's just, we need to get started somewhere. We have actually been running 2 projects already with this, and the last one was defended a month ago or something like that by Tina. And as you can see, the first one was we did in cooperation with Nottingham University. I just took some roast defect that I created during a roast session in London, and those weren't this extreme at all. So I needed to come up with some more extremes to get some better results, I felt, so I defined these, and I consider these pretty extreme in terms of the timing. And these was fed into Tina Kreuzfeld's master's thesis, and we got some results. I just want to mention this briefly because it's not going to be, this is just to put what Ida will tell into context. Because as you can see here, there was a panel analysis was made, but also a consumer test was made. And as you can see here, the normal or the reference is connected with pleasant, balanced and harmonic taste descriptors. So it seemed like we got a pretty good result in the sense that the normal or the reference was associated most with the positive descriptors. And another way of putting this is this was the hedonic rating, which one the panel, the consumer panel preferred. And as you can see, the normal was the most preferred. It's not strictly significantly different from the baked, but it's significantly different from all the others. So it seems like in this study that the reference was the preferred one. And we have got chemical analysis of this, but it's not. Unfortunately, this study is not as conclusive as I hoped it would be. So we need to work much more of this. I just took the 2 best slides from her presentation. So we are definitely far from still being conclusive of this. But I think it's a really good first couple of iterations to try to merge the way we work in the coffee business with a scientific methodology. So I think I will just quickly mention that what you tasted 12 cups, and these 12 cups were triplicates of these 4 roast profiles. So I took out the extreme light and the extreme dark because I think that's we found out that it was actually a bit confusing because it's so obviously those 2 are very different, and then you've got these 4 that are not that different. But I would like to be able to make some conclusions about these more subtle differences because remember, all of these are the exact same roast color, right? The same roast color. So the only difference between these 4 is the timing aspect of the roast. And it would be interesting to get some data on that. And this was the coffee used. Yeah, I think that was the